For the Heat facing Cavaliers on Wednesday, we look at Miami's playoff chase and wonder how far the Heat can climb in the standings and which playmaking guard might be the best fit for this team. We answered that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Have a jam-packed show for you. A spot might have just opened up for Tyler Herro to make an All-NBA team. Plus, the Heat might get a chance to revisit an old trade target this summer. But first, we're going to start today with a look at the standings in the Eastern Conference. The Heat are 7th in the East, 5 games back of the Pistons for the 6th seed. David, with 22 games left, do you think there's any chance of the Heat moving up and avoiding the play-in tournament and a first-round matchup versus the Celtics or the Cavaliers?
Mathematically, yes, but it's going to be a real challenge for this team. Like, I just, you look at the Pistons schedule, and they're doing such a great job right now. We're 9-1 over the course of their last 10. They've got a pretty cushy schedule. They're facing a lot of easy teams. Now, they do have a couple road trips here and there, and so there are some competitive games down to stretch. But even to close out the season, when you know that there's a very good chance that the standings are already be set, they have 2 games against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, that could be either one, because the Bucks right now currently at 5th, but barely hanging on to that. They might not be able to hang on to that spot in the seedings. They might need those games in order to be competitive if they're trying to jockey for position, or they could just say, you know what, we don't care. We'd rather have a more favorable matchup. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be a real test. And I hate when teams, I should say, or coaches specifically, kind of start standings watching. And I know Eric Spoelstra has kind of denied that he does that sort of thing, but that's not the reality. I think they do try to position themselves ever so slightly so they can get a more favorable matchup. But at the same time, when you look at what Miami has ahead of them, they've got to continue to win. Like, I know we talked about having a good stretch of games where they go kind of 3 of 5 or 5 of 7. That might not be enough. They might need to go on one of those extended win streaks, at least 6 or 7 straight wins, in order for them to seriously contend for that 6th seed.
So they have the 23rd easiest schedule, or 23rd toughest schedule. One of the easiest schedules, however you want to frame it. One of the easiest schedules left in the season. Detroit, the team that's sitting there at 6th, they have a slightly harder schedule than Miami does. Now, I don't know how much that actually matters, but I mean, Miami plays the Wizards twice more. They play the Hornets twice, the Pelicans once, the Sixers, they get them twice. They get Chicago twice. They get Atlanta at home again. All of those should be wins. Right.
Sure.
And so, I mean, in Detroit, they have winnable games on their schedule too. But right now, according to Basketball Reference's playoff probabilities report, the Heat have an 8.4% chance of climbing to 6. It's not much, but it's a chance. They have a almost 40% chance of staying in 7th and a 24% chance of dropping to 8th. And then smaller chances going down, like a 16% chance of 9th. So it feels like the Heat, at the very worst, are going to be locked into that 7-8 matchup in the play-in tournament. Obviously, you would hope for that 7th seed, so you would have home court in those games, or hopefully just one of those games.
Yeah.
Small chance of catching Detroit for 6. But honestly, David, at this point, I'm not counting on it. The Pistons have been just a better team this season, and they're 5 games ahead of Miami right now. It's just a lot of ground to make up with about 20 games left.
Yeah, it's too much. That losing streak around the All-Star break, that was catastrophic for their chances at trying to climb out of there. And no, I mean, it could be a miraculous close to the season, but I even think that just internally, their focus shouldn't be on what's ahead of them. It should be on trying to avoid what's behind them, because they've got teams there that are climbing just behind them, and the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks are just as likely to catch up to them. They could, I mean, the Magic is a good team. I know they've been beset by injuries, and that's the only reason why they're currently in the 8th seed in the first place. But that's just a strong team, and they've got a reliable top 10 defense that can help push this team to another level. And I think That would be my concern, is making sure that you don't slip even further down the standings rather than trying to catch any team that's ahead. That's kind of futile at this point. Just do
Yeah.
the best you can, win, focus on that, and don't even worry about every other team. Maybe Detroit, you never wish for an injury, but maybe something happens. Maybe they go on a losing streak. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. And so you just have to kind of focus on your own continued development more than anything else.
Yeah, Miami's losing streak around the All-Star break, to your point, catastrophic. Detroit recently went on an 8-game winning streak, which is really what separated them in the standings and got that 6th seed. And now we're at a point where 7, 8, and 9 in the East standings, that's going to be the jockeying for position. That's the spot, other than 4 and 5 between Milwaukee and Indiana. 7, 8, 9 in the East, those are the spots that are going to be moving around. Miami is a half game or a game and a half up on Atlanta for that 9th spot. The worst thing that could happen would be dropping into that 9-10 bracket, where you have to win 2 games in a row, which the Heat have proven not awesome at doing that.
No.
You would have to win 2 games in a row to make the playoffs, versus the 7-8 matchup, where you get 2 chances to win 1 game to advance. There and it's tight, man. And it really is. Orlando, they're going to be without Jalen Suggs for the rest of the season. So that's helpful to Miami. Atlanta's been dealing with their own stuff, but they got a nice win the other night against Memphis. They feel like, when I watch Atlanta, it feels like they're a better team than what their record is.
Yeah,
They're 28 and 33 right now, but Dyson Daniels is in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. Trae Young is still Trae Young. Karis LeVert has been giving him really good minutes since the trade deadline.
Game winner the other night, right?
Game winner. Onyeka Okongwu's kind of come along finally as a starting center for them. There's some stuff there in Atlanta that I like. To your point, you can't be standings watching right now if you're Miami. Trying to catch Detroit right now just feels like an unrealistic goal. You just got to take care of home. Take care of your business. Make sure you cannot afford another losing streak like you did around the All-Star break. You can't afford it. If you drop 4 games in a row, 3 games in a row, 4 games out of 5, something like that again, that could be it. That could be it in the standings.
Of the opponents there, like if you mentioned jockeying for position, what if it's the inverse, rather than the top teams in the Eastern Conference kind of looking at 7, 8, 9 and saying, oh, okay, I'd rather face this competitor. Like I would think that, honestly, between the volatility of the Atlanta Hawks, the defensive intensity of the Orlando Magic, I would look at Miami as being the most favorable team there. Like I would kind of hope that, if I was one of the top seeds, I would hope to face Miami rather than the other 2 teams. That's kind of a sad state of affairs for this team, because yes, they have the playoff experience. They have.
I still think I'd take Orlando. It's like the year out of hell for them.
You think they might break down in the midst of a playoff series? I guess
they broke down already.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
They're limping to the finish line here. But to your point, I don't know that I would want to face Atlanta, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of had this queued up, like any chance of Miami competing with Cleveland or Boston in the first round series, because that's who it would be. Either Miami ends up through the play-in tournament, they'll end up 7 or 8. If they're 7, they're going to draw the Celtics, who seem locked into that 2 spot. And if they're 8, they're going to be facing Cleveland, who are locked into that top spot. The answer is no, I think, unequivocally. Like, there's no chance that. Compete is one thing. They're not going to win that series.
I would find myself hard pressed to think that they would have a chance against either of those teams. Like, they're that good. Now, Cleveland, maybe you can catch them by surprise to a little. By even then, like, I think they're going to be too well coached. I think they're experienced now. They've got something to prove. They've been the best team all year, and they've had everybody challenging them and throwing their best at them, and they've just been able to be good enough to still withstand that. You like the advantage that maybe Eric Spoelstra might be able to give them, although I know a lot of fans listening to that would probably argue, have you not seen the past 60 games? Like, yeah, he's not doing anything to help his chances over the course of a playoff series. But I don't know. They would not be favored to win it, that's for sure. You might be lucky and win 2 games. And if that's the case, I might even consider that a win. Like, if you can beat Cleveland twice in the course of a 7-game series, if you can beat Boston twice over the course of the 7-game series, I'd be almost okay with it.
And that's the point here is expectations have to be adjusted. I think there's still a lot to be gained by making the playoffs, proving that, hey, post Jimmy Butler, post this big trade, post this whole soap opera, we could still get as far as we did last year, which was the play-in tournament and advance past it and play a good team in the first round. Like, we we didn't need Jimmy Butler to do that again. And I do, like, I kind of joke, but I think there's some value in that, right? And hey,
Have
we
some
didn't
pride,
trade this guy who didn't want to be here anymore and then end up in the lottery. And guys like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro, I think, could take a lot of pride in that. And if you're this organization looking for something to build on because you do not want this large gap in between championship windows again, seeing what this team can do, getting a proof of concept, getting a little bit of a sample in the playoffs, that stuff does matter, especially if you get to go against the teams that you would have to go through next year if you're hoping to make the NBA Finals or within the next few years. Look, devastating injury news across the NBA, but it could impact how a couple of Miami Heat players factor into award season. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats, but your personal phone, and well, it becomes your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. And that's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnBA. You get 20% off for 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnBA. And if you have existing numbers with other services, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Tough injury news in the NBA to start off this week. Kyrie Irving, he's going to miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL. Just devastating stuff for the Dallas Mavericks, man. Like, I know the Heat and the Mavericks met a couple times in the finals, and it's not a rosy relationship between the organizations of the fan base, but, like, you got to feel bad for what's going on in Dallas now, right?
Nah, not really.
Come on.
I'm not going to say they have it coming or anything like that, but, they kind of mismanage.
If you're a Mavericks fan, they just this would be like getting the Heat trading Dwayne Wade in 2007. You'd be like, what's going on?
If Dwayne Wade liked hookah and apparently was 20 pounds overweight, and I don't know. Like I do feel some, maybe not remorse, but I feel a little bad for them. I guess it has been difficult. Sure. Anthony Davis, a little injury there. Kyrie Irving, it's been tough, and especially 1 year removed from making the NBA Finals and thinking you're going to be not necessarily cruising, but you're going to be competitive for a while. This is not the case.
So Kyrie's out for the rest of the year with his ACL tear. Jaren Jackson Jr., it was announced before we started recording here. He's going to be considered week to week with an injury. And the guy that does the In Street Clothes website said that it's typically about a 3-week injury for Jaren Jackson Jr. And then Domantas Sabonis, he's going to be out indefinitely for the Kings with a hamstring strain. So there's a ton to get into with these injuries. But for the sake of our show here on Locked On Heat, all 3 of those guys were likely going to make an All-NBA team. And, really? I mean, or at least, Jaren Jackson Jr., he was definitely going to do it. I think Kyrie was probably going to be in there. Sabonis a little bit more borderline, but either way, 3 guys who were either right there or on the bubble of an All-NBA team, fair enough, not going to be eligible because of the league instituting a 65-game rule to qualify for the season end awards. So now you've got 3 guys, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kyrie Irving, Sabonis, not going to factor in the All-NBA conversation. By the way, Giannis, 47 games played this year. He's right there on he can't really afford to miss many other games this year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and pencil him in to an All-NBA team because as long as he's eligible, he's gonna make it. As long as he makes 65 games, obviously He's third in MVP odds right now. But I've got, including Giannis, 11 players that I've got written basically in pen for all NBA teams. In no particular order: Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis. I got Tatum, Jokic, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry. I think all of them are going to make an NBA team. First, second, third, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Would you disagree with any of those?
No.
Okay. So that leaves 4 spots now that are open. My short list, in no particular order: James Harden, Tyrese Halliburton, Karl Anthony Towns, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, Trae Young, and then the 2 Heat guys, Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo.
Maxey's out.
Maxey, I would say, is out, right? His team just doesn't win enough, and that stuff tends to matter. I don't know that Devin Booker will make it, because Kevin Durant definitely makes it over Devin Booker.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Suns are going to get 2 players on this. So I think Devin Booker's probably out. I would have Towns probably making it at this point.
Yep.
And then, is anybody from Cleveland? Oh, Evan Mobley. I forgot to include him.
Yeah.
It feels like 2 Cavs are going to get on. So whether it's Evan Mobley or Darius Garland, I'm just going to put in another Cavs spot here.
Yeah, I think it's Garland,
right? And worth mentioning now that all NBA is positionless, for listeners who might not remember that. So now I've got 2 spots there. Jaylen Brown, does he get one? Probably. Feels like the Celtics are going to get 2. Is there? I don't find a Thunder player or a Denver player that necessarily deserves all NBA recognition. No. I'm just kind of going through the top teams. Do you disagree with me on Jaylen Brown? I'm willing to have that conversation. I think that the voters will probably put him on. That's all I'm saying.
Probably put him on. I don't know. I could see an argument for not being on there, but I mean, they, as competitive as they are, as good as they are, but they've also shown that the ability to win without him. Which, I mean, that's all what what top teams are supposed to do. But
is he going to qualify even? Did I look that up?
Yeah, he's missed time before. I don't know. I would say he probably does make it. And so what we're talking about in one spot, I don't think Harden or Halliburton will make it. I think Halliburton struggles as good as Indiana's been of late. As much as he's improved, I think his struggles earlier in the season, the inconsistency probably takes him out of the running.
I think I don't know that Trae Young, I don't think
Lillard,
they make it.
Lillard has a case for making it. I don't think Young does. And I certainly don't think LaMelo Ball does. This is a similar argument we had during the All-Star selection process, and Herro did wind up making that, but this is a little different. I can't, and I don't think Bam's resurgence of late is enough to kind of push him into that kind of consideration.
So I've got 2 spots. I took Jaylen Brown out because based on our conversation, we were a little iffy on it. 2 spots going to the 3 of Halliburton, Herro, and Jaylen Brown. It's kind of where I ended up. So one of Halliburton, Herro, and Brown ends up not getting in, and then 2 of those guys get in. Could be Jaylen Brown and Tyler Herro.
Could be.
I'm with you. I don't think Bam has done enough. But look, if Bam keeps scoring the way he is, if he ends up averaging 20 points per game by the end of the year, maybe he can get into this conversation. But right now, I don't think he's there.
It's so hard for everyone, and not just reporters or media members, but it's just the idea of shaking narratives. The start of the season was so wonky. I think most people viewed Miami just with the lens of the issues that they're going through with Jimmy and the drama, and then you take a closer look and you look at Bam's numbers, and they were so pedestrian, and you wonder, he's really plateaued, or maybe he's taking a step down, maybe he's hurt. The fact that he's had this resurgence of late and how it translates, again, we're talking about this team maybe being in the play-in tournament. No one's going to notice a 25 point per game scorer on a play-in team that he's shown that over the last 20 games of the season. That's all fine and good, and it's something that Heat fans will appreciate. I just don't think voters outside of South Florida will even notice what Bam has been able to accomplish. By the way,
the first 25 games matter just as much as the last 25 games, right? He was in a slump. He was not a good offensive player for 2 months out of the year. That does matter, right? It's all part of the same body of work. So, and by the way, the Heat are not getting 2 players in.
Oh no.
And so you just start there, and if one Heat player gets to get on, it's Tyler. It's been his year. He's been the best player on the team this year. It's Tyler Herro. So I think Herro makes it, because you and I had our doubts about All-Star, and we're like, does he get the respect and all this stuff? It seemed like voters and coaches and people wanted Tyler Herro in that All-Star game, and so he's got that respect now. So I think they're going to probably want him third team. And by the way, all that stuff that you said about Bam, Jaylen Brown had a really rough start to the year too. Maybe there's a little bit of a reputation with him that's settled. Ditto for Tyrese Halliburton. To your point, it's hard to shake some of the beginnings, and maybe that's why Halliburton wouldn't make it, despite the fact that he's been playing well for Indiana. So who would you put in those last 2 spots? I'd go Tyler Herro and probably Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to. But
Dame over
it's
Brown?
hard for me to. Maybe I could see that argument too. I don't know, or
He's got an argument.
Dame over Hero. To be honest with you, I mean, you can't really go wrong. Victor Wembanyama's injury obviously takes him out of the running. Yeah. I mean, it's just so unfortunate. So who were your top 5 again? Or was it?
I didn't. Well, my top 5 is Shea, Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, Tatum, and Jokic.
Tatum and Jokic. All right. And Brunson's second teamer for you?
I didn't think about that, but I'd probably put him there with Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James, and then Steph as my third team lock.
Yeah.
And then I like Towns and Mobley as third team locks.
Over Garland. See,
I'd probably go Mobley over Garland.
You don't think they could get 3?
They could. Yeah, maybe I haven't really considered that. Would you just go Garland and Herro then?
Or Garland and Brown?
I'm putting Herro in over Brown. Hero's been better than Brown this year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, my thinking is that people around the league, as much as
I'm asking you, what do you want? What would you do? I'm more interested in what you would do.
Yeah, Tyler, let's do it.
Wait, so what did you end up on your third team? You went Steph, Towns, Garland instead of Mobley, or Garland and Mobley with Herro?
No, Mobley. Well, I'd have Mobley on there.
Herro, and then who's your 5th guy?
No, I guess Tatum. I'm sorry, Brown. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's what I think I ended up with too. I'd hear the Damian Lillard argument. He's been awesome for Milwaukee.
He has. I wonder if they have enough steam, if they peter out towards the end of the playoff chase or something like that, especially if Giannis continues to miss time.
And it's also weird to have 2 Bucks, even though they're basically tied with Indiana, and no Pacers on this team. But the Pacers are kind of bolstered by their depth, while Milwaukee's sort of, they're carried by their top 2 guys.
Yeah, that's it.
Siakam is tough. The numbers aren't really there for Siakam.
That's an interesting case. But I think he's got the recognition, and again, given the record and everything else like that, like it would be. I wouldn't be all that surprised if he makes it third team.
So Siakam, Jaylen Brown, Damian Lillard. That's sort of our trio that we're debating for that.
Yeah,
the 15th and final spot there. But Tyler Herro, congrats! You made our All-NBA team 60 games into the season. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, James Harden, 3 names that we did not include on our All-NBA teams. We play a game of Would You Rather next.
Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Who's in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. And therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times. It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and becoming the best version of yourself. Sometimes you just need to learn how to ask for help. And I've seen firsthand how valuable it is to have a support system that keeps you grounded and motivated so that you can continue to ask those questions that might lead to even further development. And so that's where therapy really helps you take that next level. If you're looking to find an increased support system or take that next level of your own personal development. So build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today, and you get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. So, David, we talked about this on the NBA East Squad show earlier this week. You can find that on the Locked On Heat feed as well. And I wanted to ask you about it. I thought it was really interesting. So it was reported that teams might be monitoring LaMelo Ball's availability this summer. I think the noise around Trae Young's future in Atlanta has been out there. And so we were asked, who would you rather trade for if you were just, a hypothetical team this summer, LaMelo Ball or Trae Young? So I wanted to bring that up to you. And then I saw that Kevin O'Connor this week raised the question about whether the Clippers should trade James Harden this summer to start their rebuild. Harden's had a good year, and maybe at his age and where the Clippers are, there's an argument to be made, I suppose, to sell high on James Harden, so to speak, and just sort of get this next thing going. But I'm going to include him in this question too. Would you rather, David, trade the Miami Heat, specifically, trade for Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, or James Harden?
To me, it's a pretty clear answer. One player, I think, is too young, immature, and not ready for this Heat team. Another player is too old, and as accomplished as he might be, probably not the right fit for this team and this current timeline. So I've got to go with Trae Young. I think he's the right choice for this team. I think he kind of fits that mold too. I know there's going to be issues there in terms of what his defense brings, but you're looking at an elite scorer, certainly one of the best passers in the NBA. A lob threat constantly in terms of his ability to get guys at the rim. We're talking about the development of Khalil Ware, helping unlock Bam Adebayo. Even Andrew Wiggins would be a legitimate lob threat with a passer like Trae Young. But Trae is a kind of guy who needs that boost in terms of changing his legacy around, because he hasn't really done anything in Atlanta. They've been in the playoffs just as much as they've been out of them. The reputation is out on what he is. Is he the centerpiece for a team? He needs kind of a reset in terms of his image and how people view him around the league. And I think a team like Miami would be just as beneficial for him as it would be for him able to help this group. So I would go with Trae Young in a heartbeat.
I think I go LaMelo here. And the Trae Young thing, I'll start there.
Have fun with your new co-host.
The thing that Trae Young can do is he would provide right away an elite passer. You could argue that Trae Young is the best passing point guard in the league. Oh, yeah. There is an argument to be made for that. He's a genius level passer, and you watch this team so much, just basic struggles of throwing an entry pass to Bam Adebayo. A guy who can unlock Bam in the post. Obviously, he would hash out some immediate chemistry with Khalil Ware as a lob threat. Like, that stuff is awesome with Trae Young. And LaMelo Ball is also a very good high-level passer. He's not Trae Young. And that would be really interesting to me if I were Miami. And he's got the shooting range. I wouldn't hate Trae Young. I think it would be a really interesting experiment. But if all things are equal, I still think if I'm going to take a swing, I might as well take the biggest swing I can. And I might just go LaMelo. To me, there's no question who the more talented basketball player is. Just in sheer talent, it's LaMelo. I don't know that there's 10 players more talented than LaMelo. I mean, what he can do is just downright magical sometimes. And I know that we can joke, and we certainly do it here on this show, about the one-legged step-back three-pointers and just sort of the antics and the clear immaturity that he has on and off the court. But the talent is so undeniable. And at 6'6", 6'7", with his passing ability, with the magic that he can make, his scoring ability, that's even far and beyond what Trae Young can do.
Sure.
This is a guy who averaged 30 points per game for most of this season. Would be so tempting to me if I were Miami and just be like, look, in Charlotte, it was the worst possible scenario. Like, basically 0 NBA caliber teammates for most of his career there. Going through coaches, either he was forced to do everything. His shot selection is one thing, and I definitely think he deserves some blame for the shot selection. But also, like, once Brandon Miller went down this year, who else is he supposed to be passing it to?
Right.
Nick Smith Jr.? Like, what are we doing here? So it's, I would be tempted to take, like I said, if I'm going to take a swing, and I think Trae Young and LaMelo Ball would both represent a swing, I might as well just go with the biggest swing possible, because if you could be the team that fixes LaMelo Ball, I do think that there is a winning player in LaMelo Ball somewhere. I really do. And here's the other thing, David. His numbers are off the charts this year. Didn't make All-Star. not going to make All NBA.
Yeah.
You think about moments in players' careers where we see this all the time. Players come into the league, they want the accolades, the individual stats, all that stuff, and eventually then they start to value and prioritize the right things, the winning things. If anything is going to push LaMelo to prioritize those things, it would be this season where he's like, I did all the scoring. I got none of the recognition of the accolades because my team didn't win. So maybe he would turn that other leaf. I don't know. I'd be willing to take that swing, but it would be, man, I would be doing it with my eyes closed, David. I'm not telling you it would be chaotic times here in Miami.
I can't imagine them fixing him. Like, he's not broken. He's not like that. But I don't think they could wake up the hamster in the wheel that he uses as a brain enough to make him a functional player in South Florida. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. Like, there's just nothing about his game that I see and go, wow, he's going to be a great fit, or he gets it. I think he's content. He feels like, and I know I sound really old man yelling at cloud here and very curmudgeonly and everything, but at the same time, he feels like he is the embodiment of AAU basketball and all the negative things that people associate with Mr.
Yes.
Get your points, and just doesn't have to worry about anything else. He can put up some nice shots that great for highlights and get your attention, and at the same time, none of it matters because it's not actually contributing to winning or anything like that. He seems so antithetical to what Miami is trying to do and what Miami has been. And I mean, he would bring a large fan base over. It would be great for us. Certainly, we'd have a lot more people talking about this team and curious about what his fit would be like, etc. But I just think you weigh what he can do versus what Trae can do. And I'm not a huge Trae Young fan by any stretch. I just think he's right in that cusp of,
he's the
I got to
fit.
do something. Yeah. I've got to do something with my career. I need to be able to continue to win. And I don't, for whatever reason, I don't question his commitment to winning anywhere near as much as I question.
Well, he's showing it this year. I know that his numbers are down and stuff, but I like the way Trae Young is playing this year for Atlanta more than I have ever. I mean, he is off the ball a little bit. I mean, I was watching the end of that Grizzlies game when Atlanta made their 17-point comeback or whatever it was. He was like cool. Yeah. Dyson Daniels had it going. He was like, you do it, man. It's fine. Yeah. I think Trae Young has showed those steps of maturity this year.
That's the beard.
But the thing, and Trae Young is the cleaner fit offensively, no question. Like, I could see how Trae Young would be willing to get off the ball for somebody like Tyler Herro, get the ball to Kel'el Ware, get the ball to Bam. Yeah. Offensively, he could turn. I think he could transform this unit into a legitimately top 10 unit offensively. I have no question about that. I think put Trae Young on this offense right now, and obviously, I don't know what you have to trade, but if you just put Trae Young on this offense, they would be a top 10 offense in the league.
Fair enough.
Defensively, you could never hold up with Trae Young and Tyler Herro. Like, there's no way to win a championship with those guys as your backcourt defensively. I just don't see it. Whereas LaMelo, he's not a good defender, but at least he has the length, and I would be curious, like Miami, to reach the highest of highs, to win a championship. If you could turn LaMelo into an average defender, you at least have that ability because of his length, where I just don't know, because of how small Trae Young is, that he ever becomes average defensively. And that to me is a tough part. So I don't know. It's tough. I don't know that I see any of these happening, but it was just a fun would you rather. Interesting that you and I both didn't even consider James Harden. I just think it's because of his age. But yeah,
I think so.
It's a fascinating would you rather sort of what if scenario. But
I can't even believe that they'd trade LaMelo, though, to be honest with you. Like, Charlotte, I know they're kind of totally handcuffed by him. Yeah. What's that?
No, it's a good point. Yes.
He's their identity. Like, I mean, nobody would
care
about
the flag. Then they could just be like, well, let's just do the Cooper Flag, Brandon Miller thing, and let's see what we can get for LaMelo Ball. But to your point, it's sort of selling low on LaMelo. I don't know. The Orlando Magic make more sense for LaMelo.
Oh,
maybe. I don't know. I take that back, actually. I haven't given this enough thought. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.